Okay, so there's this massive deal involving one of Kenya's most important companies, Safaricom, and it's got everybody talking. Right at the center of it all is a really simple but also incredibly complicated question. Is the price actually fair? And to find the answer, everyone is looking at one official opinion, the one from Deloitte. So let's break it all down.
Here's the core of it. We're talking about the Kenyan government making around 245 billion shillings from selling its Safaricom shares. I mean, that's a huge transaction by any measure, but the fairness of it is under some serious scrutiny, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
So here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll look at the sheer scale of the sale itself. Then we'll get into why an independent referee, in this case Deloitte, was even called in. After that, we'll reveal their official verdict, break down what fair really means in this context, and this part is key. And finally, we'll look at the big questions that are still hanging in the air.
All right, first things first. To really get what this whole debate is about, you've got to understand the sheer size and the specifics of what's actually on the table. Let's dig into the numbers. So what we're talking about is the government selling off a pretty big chunk, 15% of Safaricom. This move takes the government's direct holding from 35% all the way down to just 20%. That's a huge shift in the ownership of one of the nation's most critical companies.
Okay, now for the number that is really at the heart of this entire controversy. 34 shillings. That's the price per share that Vodafone Kenya has agreed to pay. You're going to want to remember this number because it's what this whole debate really hinges on. And, when you do the math, that 15% stake at 34 shillings a share, it all adds up to a staggering 245 billion shillings. This is way more than just a corporate deal. With this kind of money involved, it's a transaction of real national significance. So, with a deal this big, you might be wondering, why did they need an outside expert to come in and give their opinion? Well, it's because this wasn't just a simple sale on the open market. There was let's call it, a complication. It all comes down to this term, a related party transaction. In simple terms, the buyer, Vodafone, isn't some random outsider. They're already a huge shareholder in the company. And whenever an insider is buying, it can create a potential conflict of interest. That's exactly why regulators step in and say, whoa, hold on. We need an independent assessment to make sure all the other shareholders are getting a fair shake. And the way regulators handle this is with something called a fairness opinion. Now, let's be super clear here. This isn't about figuring out what Safaricom as a whole is worth. Its job is much, much more specific. To decide if the price is fair and reasonable for the shareholders who are not a part of the deal. And that was Deloitte's exact assignment. Okay, so the stage is set. Deloitte comes in as the independent referee. They do their analysis, they crunch the numbers. So, what was the final verdict? What did they say? Well, back in December of 2025, after looking at all the terms of that 34 shilling per share deal, Deloitte formally issued its highly anticipated opinion. And there you have it. Deloitte concluded that the price of 34 shillings per share is, and I'm quoting here, fair and reasonable for the Safaricom shareholders not involved in the sale. So, from a purely regulatory standpoint, that gives the deal a big green light to move forward. But hold on, because this is where the story gets, well, a lot more complicated. That word, fair, sounds so final, right? But what does it actually cover in this situation? The answer is probably a lot narrower than you think. The devil, as they say, is in the details. Okay, you really need to look closely at this because it gets to the heart of the whole debate. On the left, you see what Deloitte did assess. Was the price fair to the other shareholders? Did it follow the rules? But now look at the right. Their opinion did not assess Safaricom's total company value, its incredible potential for growth, or its long-term strategic importance. The crucial point here is that fair is a very specific, very technical term in this context. And that's the thing, because Deloitte's job was so specific, so narrowly focused, it didn't end the public debate at all. Actually, in a lot of ways, it just made people ask even more questions about everything that wasn't in their report. You see, the critics are asking much bigger questions. Things like, was Safaricom, with its total dominance in mobile money and its plans for expansion, was it undersold? Why wasn't there a competitive bidding process to maybe drive the price up? And maybe the biggest question of all, is the country getting the full value for what is, without a doubt, a strategic national asset? These questions, they go way beyond the technical definition of fairness to shareholders.
So at the end of the day, this is where we land. We have this central tension, right? On one hand, Deloitte says the deal meets the legal and regulatory standard of fairness for a very specific group of people, the other shareholders. But that leaves this much bigger, more profound question just hanging there. Is this deal truly fair for the country and its long-term strategic interests? That's the real question at the heart of this whole story.